Hey guys, welcome to my video where I document my continuing journey of using exposure therapy to help treat my choking phobia. So today I have Pizza Hut, and already my stress levels are a bit high because when I got it, it wasn't actually warm, it was cold, and so I had to heat it up. And obviously that's annoying for a number of reasons. One being the fact that someone who has OCPD, which I do, is doesn't like things to change a lot. So when you order something, you don't want to like put an extra step in that wasn't included in the process. Like when you order food, it's expected to be hot. Fortunately, the guy who was delivering it to me didn't have a bag. I'm assuming he may have. It just didn't feel like he did because the pizza was outside for about 30-40 seconds and it got ridiculously cold, almost to the point where it was like lukewarm, you couldn't eat it. So that stressed me out. And the second thing is obviously, when you're dealing with choking phobia related with food, you don't want anything to really be different or uncomfortable in any way. When you want to do an exposure, you want to be the most relaxed you can possibly be, because you're only going to get more anxious from that point onward. So if you're starting with a level of anxiety that's a bit high, perhaps fix that, deal with that. I'm not saying don't do the exposure, perhaps do less of it and focus more on the fact that your anxiety will come down, and that you'll see kind of like for example, from an 80 to a 40, or a 20 to a 30, or a 10 to a 5. Just allow yourself to know that's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then hey, you can always try another time with less food. So I'm going to do that, and then got some things I want to talk about here. I'll get into that in a second. So first thing is exposure. On the scale of 0 to 100, how much do I fear choking on this food? It's Pizza Hut, as I mentioned, everything. I'm saying 20, although as soon as I'm saying it, it goes down to a 0. And I think that just comes from the fact that I've been doing this so much. And I think my brain kind of knows what's up, what's going on. So it's next thing you do is just eat it. So I'm writing down, started at 20. When I finish eating, I'm saying 0 now. I haven't finished my exposure though. I'm saying 0 now because that's what I felt when I had the pizza in my hand, and I said to myself, I'm saying 20 now, and it's went into 0. When I'm saying it, that's the behavior you want to get into, kind of like telling yourself, no, the fear level is not as high as you think it is. It's actually less. So now let's get into some real world examples of other people who have choking phobia, who've written their experiences. There is a message board on the internet called Reddit. If you don't know what Reddit is, please just Google Reddit, Reditt, and you'll find there's a message board. There's lots of message boards about different things. I found one about what I have, or other many people have. It's called choking phobia. And I have 3 stories of people who've kind of like, I don't want to say recovered, but they've definitely kind of like been on the other side of it all. Kind of like, oh yeah, I've kind of like struggled and now I'm better. Like, I don't use those words, quote unquote better. I don't, quote unquote better. I don't use those words. I use several gradations of gray. So it's, clinical, subclinical, all these things. It comes down to basically how you feel from one day to the next, from 1 month to the next. It determines whether you're quote unquote cured or better or worse. So that being said, there's 3 people who posted fairly long articles that I wanted to get across. So let's just start them, and I want you guys to learn about them and read them, follow along. You don't have to read them, they'll be said aloud, and just ponder, like, these are people who had problems and this is what they did to help themselves. So you're not alone. This is the whole point of me doing this, so you're not alone. So the first one's about an 8-minute thing, 8-minute experience.
Like the rest of you, I turned to this subreddit in order to find some sort of relief or comfort. We all know this is a very unique and understudied phobia. I decided that the least I could do is contribute a list of techniques that have helped me mostly overcome this debilitating issue. I need to start by saying that I do not hold any medical qualifications, and these techniques are not to be interpreted as medical advice. I recommend speaking with your doctor regarding anything related to your pseudodysphagia. To give some context, I experienced my first ever panic attack almost a year ago, which essentially left my mind in a state of shock. I continued to feel severe anxiety and depersonalization following the event. I believe it was this event that triggered my pseudodysphagia. What happened was the persistent anxiety caused the muscles in my throat to tighten. I began to excessively swallow, which eventually led to irritation. It was this combination of things that caused me to experience a sensation of choking, but it was enough to scare me and to develop this phobia. So over the last 10 months I have fought to make it back to normality, and it's working. The following is a list of everything I have done. You have to remember that there will be highs and lows, and it will be a long battle. Nothing will happen overnight. It's literally like learning to walk again. You don't develop habits. I honestly think this the most important step to take, and should be immediately prioritized. So with a phobia, I believe that our first instinct is to think of ways to avoid situations in which we are exposed to that fear. This is how things spiral out of control. The phobia starts to consume your life and your thoughts, and will completely ruin your mental state. When my pseudodysphagia was extraordinarily bad, I started fearing eating with friends, or eating in my room, or putting certain foods on my plate. When I acknowledged that I was doing this, I knew I had to push myself into uncomfortable situations or else it would destroy me. So I would go out for breakfast with friends and order something very easy to eat. In some cases it was just a smoothie. Sometimes I couldn't finish my meal, but at least I tried. The idea is that I kept pushing myself to maintain a normal lifestyle. Calm your mind. In the early months I would become extremely stressed during eating. I would overchew my food and constantly obsess in a what-if way. After the meal, regardless if I ate it or not, I would feel uneasy and have to lay down. So instead of letting the stress and anxiety get the better of me, I would meditate. I would pop in some headphones and listen to a guided meditation. Sometimes a walk or a long shower would do the trick as well. It's really about focusing your mind away from swallowing and towards something more real. As things have become better, I do this less and less. Rationalize. This is much easier said than done. I found that the doctors I spoke with have a terrible way of explaining this as well. The truth of the matter is your automatic nervous system is very good at helping you swallow, and you've been an expert at it your whole life. And 7 billion people are swallowing right now. Why does it feel wrong now? It's because it's all in your head. I have to remind myself these things constantly. It's incredibly annoying, but I'm far better off than when I assumed I had some sort of rare cancer. If you can't rationalize, take the nihilistic approach. Trigger warning. Occasionally I would get really upset with myself because of this fear. I just wanted to eat normally again. It didn't matter how much I rationalized it, it still didn't feel comfortable. So I tried taking things in the opposite direction. I told myself, well, if you choke and die on this, then you must be a pathetic human who wasn't meant to live past 30 anyway. Bright side is if you don't choke and you get to enjoy a delicious meal. Honestly, this worked more often than not. Start small. This is in terms of food. For the first month all I could eat was protein shakes and soup. I eventually upgraded to mashed potatoes, then to rice, eggs, avocados, pasta, ground beef, salad. The texture of the food kept becoming more tough and coarse. This takes time, but the idea is simple. Push yourself to try more scary things until it becomes the norm. Then push yourself again. I can honestly say that the only thing I still struggle with is tough meats. Today I literally enjoyed a burger. Find your favorite food. If you can do this, grab onto it and hang on with your life. One of my favorite foods is eggs Benedict. Now when this all started I couldn't touch it. English muffins? Big no, way too chewy. But as I became more comfortable with eating bread, I decided to make this dish. Taking that first bite was just pure joy. There was no fear. Taste is a powerful thing. It certainly helped me calm my mind and focus on positive things. I would down that eggs Benedict. Pseudodysphagia will not stop me. Distract yourself. Try eating your meals in front of the TV while watching something you enjoy. Like I said, swallowing is mostly an automatic action. It will do the work for you, especially when you're not paying attention to the swallow. I also find eating outside has a similar effect. Train like a professional eater, so this one is interesting. In my quest for normality, I thought about taking a different approach to eating. How is it some people can shove 100 hot dogs down their throat in a minute? There has to be some techniques they're using to achieve this. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite find the how to eat like a professional eater while not actually eating guide, but apparently one technique they use is to take large gulps of water. Basically take a large sip of water and hold it in your mouth, then initiate a swallow. For me it felt uncomfortable at first, but eventually I got more used to the feeling. Really though, without a proper study I can't truly confirm if this did anything significant, but mentally, I came out of it feeling more confident. Watch cooking shows. Immerse yourself in the world of food. Make food your friend. Become excited to cook and eat food. This may seem like torture to some, but really it all comes back to not building bad habits. Everyone loves food. I know you loved food before this condition. Bring those feelings back. Normalize food. I cook. This can be a reassuring way to start eating normally again. If you yourself cook the meal, then you can assure it fits your mood for that day. First instance, I was slowly trying to eat ground beef again, but larger pieces still made me uneasy, so I would cook it and ground it up really fine. Same for things like steamed vegetables. I would make sure that they were extra soft for my comfort. Gradually rituals died out as I became more comfortable. Medication. I was prescribed an SSRI when I began having the severe bouts of anxiety. For the first 6 months I chose not to take them because I wanted to try therapy first. The therapy certainly helped a lot, and it focused on many issues in my life, not just the pseudodysphagia. Although this helped, I still felt that there was this underlying anxiety that was holding me back from recovering fully. I eventually decided that I needed to utilize every weapon at my disposal to beat this condition, and started taking 10 milligrams of escitalopram, doctor prescribed of course. I gotta say, I was terrified at first, but it has completely kept my anxiety and phobia in check. With this tool I've been able to rationalize eating much better, and I seriously feel as if I'm 95% back to normal. What normal eating and swallowing feels like. Normally eating shouldn't feel like anything. This is where I am now. I would say I can get through most meals now without second guessing myself. If I for a moment think, oh, is this choking size? Bam. Swallowing feels unnatural. I almost have to give myself a mental slap. These thoughts are lessening, but they're a massive nuisance. I know that they will eventually stop, and I won't even notice. I can't wait. I sincerely send my best thoughts and wishes to everyone reading this. It truly is debilitating, but I want you to know that it can be overcome, and you will be able to live comfortably and happy once again. Cloudy.
Thanks, Cloudy. That really helped me, and I hope many other people. Let's just go on to the next one. Another, survivor, someone who's experienced stroke phobia. This is about a 6-minute read.
I told myself I would come back and post on here when I feel like this has gone. I've struggled for about 6 months with swallowing, and it came on so randomly, and I just could no longer trust that I would swallow without choking. I was making myself choke too, because every time I swallowed I would react as if I was choking and start coughing and pushing the food back out. It has been so horrible to live with, but I hope sharing this will give someone hope, because it's incredibly worrying and upsetting. It took months of working on it but not putting pressure on myself. I think the more worry you throw in makes it worse. Worrying about not getting enough calories. How could myself have anyone else save me if I was choking? Would I ever be able to swallow without a panic reaction every single time? From my own experience, what I done was to make sure I was getting at least 1,500 calories or more every day, so the worry about not getting enough would go away. And at first I got this by having loads of breakfast shakes, the Weetabix ones if you're in the UK, and the nutrition drinks that are in a tin. They taste like metal, so if you can find the bottled ones, stock up on them. I then just started blending Weetabix cereal blocks. Let them soak up the milk for a while before blending. With milk and bananas and drinking that, and it was always a relief, because at least it's a healthy breakfast and some sort of nutrition, so I'm not going to fade away. If you can eat it, drink it. I would then have smooth soup like tomato and worked it up to lentil. Try to drink orange juice with bits in it or smoothies to get used to having bits in your mouth again. I also found that cheese and chocolate were easy to eat because it breaks down so much in your mouth, and corn crisps like Wotsits. I also found that the more flavored food is, the more you want to swallow it. I had seen something about if you can't swallow, stick salt on the end of your tongue, and it somewhat works but isn't a good idea for the long term. So when you feel comfortable enough to try again, try with foods that are super strong flavored. As it was getting better, I could only swallow first. I like sieving it through my teeth and swallowing a normal mouthful in little bits and chewing it up for ages before I would swallow any. I also watched a lot of videos on strengthening the swallow reflex by doing exercises, which helped me trust in my swallow. I watched videos too on people who choose to only live life on a liquid diet. You don't have to do that. For health benefits, and it made me feel more at ease, like at least I could survive if I choose to live this way and not like it's been forced on me. Try to go about your day like you don't even have a problem. Just be optimistic as possible and not take mind to the issue. If you have a thought that scares you about it, just be like, no, I'm fine. I drank a high-calorie smoothie this morning, and don't think about it. Small steps forward, don't throw yourself back. It takes as long as it takes. It's frustrating, but the more you ponder on it, the more it sticks around. I did start taking antidepressants for a couple months too, but they didn't seem to be helping at all. I got prescribed sertraline 100 milligrams and snapped them in half because I have always been a bit funny about taking anxiety medications. This helps a lot of people and can sometimes solve the problem. It may have not helped me because from snapping them I was taking a small dosage. I found reading and taking my mind other places, like from self-hypnosis videos with headphones and before I sleep, and eating things like melt in your mouth foods while watching TV helped a lot because I was eating something that I would have done before and there wasn't an issue with it. I'm going to try and make a list of foods I would eat at first, small steps and small bites. Making homemade smoothies and taking chewy vitamins that just chew until dissolved. Flavored yogurt with honey or syrup on top of it. Eating it with a teaspoon to make sure it was just small bits at a time helped. I use a big spoon now. Grated cheese would literally just make a small plate of it and sit and graze on it. Any corn crisps that were super soft. Soups, I started with tomato and slowly added lentil into it. You can buy these super smooth ones that are really yummy too if you don't like tomato soup that much. I started adding berry buttered bread into this too without the crusts and taking the tiniest bites ever, and at first it took hours, but you feel happy and proud once you look down and it's gone. Doesn't matter how long it takes to get you in or how tiny the bite is or how long it takes to swallow the tiny bite. When it's in and you feel super happy like, well, I have ate a bit of bread. Not how I would normally or someone else would, but I've done it. Mash, although it's soft, I sometimes struggled to swallow it even though it's my favorite food ever. I covered it in gravy and eventually started adding boiled veg to it like broccoli, so it felt like a normal souper, but I would do the sieving thing through my teeth and swallow it in tiny bits. So 1 or 2 normal swallows that it would normally take to clear your mouth, I would do in like 10 different little ones. Chew gum. I would chew gum to strengthen up the muscles and get used to having something in my mouth, and the flavor of it would help me swallow the salvia. As I noticed it was going away, I was doing stuff like going to put another forkful of food, and even though I wasn't done with the first one and it kind of came back to me because I just instinctively swallowed what was there to make room for the fork coming towards my mouth. This did not happen straight away, so don't worry about it. Never add any stress onto this. You have to be just like, oh well, whatever. And if you have a reaction, try just laugh it off. Turn the fear into the oh my goodness, that's a bit annoying, and try again. If the plate in front of you takes 3 or more hours to finish, then so be it. And if you don't finish it, that's okay too. And try not judge your progress day by day, because there will be absolutely terrible days, but again, just think, oh well, Shakes Day it is, and you'll notice you have good days, and on that days, get as much in as you can, because it will make you not worry about food intake that much if the next day is a bad one. You find that the more you start to take in, the hungrier you start to feel, and when your appetite comes back, it helps so much with eating. Like when you get that peckish feeling during the day and would take like 5 different food items from the kitchen to sit down and crunch on, it all comes back, I promise. Just don't worry about how long it's going to take. Hope this helps someone or gives them some sort of hope if all feels lost. Baby steps, guys.
Yep, that's what my mom said, baby steps. So these are actually really, really powerful for me. Let's just do the last one. This is like the 3rd most popular article about choking phobia or fear of choking on Reddit. Oh, so this, I think this one here. Okay. This is a 4-minute read. And let's just read it.
To make a long story short, I struggle with all kinds of anxiety. I'm diagnosed with OCD. My OCD usually comes in the form of hypersensory fixations, and I've always had a fixation on fear of complications involving the throat. I'm also a hypochondriac, suffer from panic disorder, and I've got PTSD from my mentally plus physically abusive childhood. My mother was a bit of a Munchausen syndrome type. She always self-diagnosed me and my sister with all sorts of things that neither of us had, and I think she took some form of joy in the fear and distress that it brought me as a child. Don't ask me why. My guess is as good as yours, and I don't speak to her nowadays. So anyways, just a little background on me and some of my mental diagnoses. I'm not sure if pseudodysphagia or phagophobia is the correct terminology for what's going on with me. I think it might be a bit of both. I'll also state that I've had barium swallow tests conducted twice and they both came back fine on the...
Okay, so you've heard those words pseudophagia and phagophobia. What they mean is pseudophagia means fear of choking on food, and phagophobia means fear of swallowing, actual act. I believe so. They're very closely related. That's what they mean. So if you guys are wondering.
That I've had barium swallow tests conducted twice and they both came back fine and the doctor could not find anything physically preventing me from swallowing, just so that's out of the way. I'm also on SSRI and panic medication. The strangest part of my experience with it is that I can pinpoint the exact day and place in which it started, but nothing happened. I don't have a choking story or a near choking story that put me here. It was at a work meeting. They had food out, so I got a bagel and I remember feeling like I was unable to swallow it, which was abnormal. I'd always been fine with eating and I always loved food. I stopped trying to eat it in order to focus on the meeting, but the weird experience stayed on my mind all day, and sure as when I got home, my hypochondriac self decided to look it up, and I believe it was in that moment that I bestowed this awful obsession and fear of choking upon myself. At first, I was still able to eat most things. If there were days when I'd have trouble with one thing, I could still usually eat another thing fairly easily. If worst came to worst, I could just take a sip of water and it'd be fine. 16 months later and I'm still struggling with it, but it has become slowly and gradually worse. Much worse. I can swallow liquids without a problem, but I'm completely and entirely mentally unable to swallow anything that isn't purely liquid. This means yogurt, mashed potatoes, chunky soup, etc. I can't swallow any of that without spitting it out several times throughout the meal or chewing it, even though it's already soft, for upwards of 60 plus seconds. I do attempt to eat normal foods as well, but I can't eat those without taking a big sip of water and holding it in my mouth for over a minute until I either gain the courage to swallow normally or it becomes too much for me and I spit it out. Eating with others is a nightmare and I try to avoid it as much as I possibly can. It's like my mind has linked the act of swallowing with danger and I can't convince it otherwise. No matter how much I try to rationalize, no matter how much I try to breath relax while eating, no amount of distractions. It's always the same and my thoughts revolve around it, honestly. When I get hungry, it's a feeling of dread, and it's such a shame because, as I stated previously, I love food and I miss it. I want to eat normally more than anything. My brain has forgotten how to swallow. The act of doing so with food feels foreign. I don't know why beverages are not a part of this fear. I can even swallow small pills with water, oddly enough. It's simply food. There have been a few times that I've managed to relax enough to swallow normally, but then the feeling of the food going down my throat sends me into a panic and makes me feel like I could almost choke, and like the swallowing process will stop midway and I'll suffocate and die. This has happened 2-3 times, and each time it makes my fear much worse. I spoke to my doctor about this and he said I need to be consuming 2500 calories a day, but I'm struggling to scrape 600 through pure food. Now, I've done some reading on this topic and it absolutely sucks to find out that there's close to no literature or coverage on how to cure this specific phobia. It's my first time reaching out to a community of others who understand this. Where do I even begin? I feel like everything I try is a dead end and it's making me feel so absolutely hopeless and scared. I feel like I'm gonna continue on like this forever. I've lost an unhealthy amount of weight and I do try my best to eat as much as I possibly can, which still isn't a lot, but I feel like I'm scraping by. I don't feel like I'm getting nutrients and I don't feel like I'm being nourished. IDK, what to do?
Apologize. I was eating still. So this one's bit less hopeful. If she's reading this or he's reading this, I could recommend is what the other guy did, which was making a list of foods, and from that list, going from least to most comfortable, right? I'm just trying to look it up here, where she, for example, you start with small things here like protein shakes and soup, right? Then you quote unquote upgrade, right? You go to harder foods, mashed potatoes. Once you master that, rice. Once you master that, eggs. Once you master that, avocados, right? Once you master that, pasta. Once you master that, ground beef. Once you master that, salad. So as long as the texture of the food becomes more and more rough and coarse, you'll find yourself gradually from lowest feared foods to highest feared foods, developing some sort of reduction in fears. Because he asked, well, what is the, I guess, specific cure? Or, she wrote here that there is that there's close to no literature on how to cure this specific phobia. That is somewhat true. Specifically about choking phobia, yeah. We gotta understand though, there are a lot of specific phobias, and there are, but a handful of ways to cure these, or not cure, I don't use the word cure. There's a handful of ways to deal with, manage, and to a certain extent take control of these specific phobias. I mentioned in my videos, exposure therapy, which I just mentioned, making the foods in a high to low gradation system and tackling the lowest to the highest and seeing what levels of your anxiety are. So basically what I just was doing with the 20 to 0 in the beginning. Breathing exercises, right? Breathing 3 times, like right? Developing a calm place, some place where you can develop that's calming. I understand what she's talking about though, because there isn't like specifically about choking phobia. No, there isn't a lot of information. But about specific phobias, like for example, dog phobia, bee phobia, social phobia, emetophobia, which is like fear of vomiting or fear of watching somebody vomiting. I'm better at that. Plant phobia, any phobia you have, insect phobia, you do the same thing that if you were to do if you had choking phobia or food phobia, which is you gradually introduce yourself to the thing that is feared. Watch your anxiety come down. Give yourself a scale of 0 to 100 in the beginning. Do it, and watch your anxiety. Give yourself 0 to 100 at the end. So I understand where you're coming from. There isn't very much evidence about, a lot of literature about it. There is though about specific phobias, because it goes like the categorization goes phobia, and then specific phobia, and then my specific phobia or our specific phobia, which is choking phobia. So there are different types of specific phobias. There could be dog phobia, there could be spider phobia, there could be social phobia, there could be, as I mentioned, all these different phobias, bee phobia. They're all specific phobias though, and they can all be cured the same, they can all be managed and helped the same way. So don't kind of think this is horrible and I don't know where to turn. Simply just look at it, like Google exposure therapy. Google specific phobias, learn about specific phobias. You'll realize they're all the same. They all kind of come from the same way. Like you said here, you didn't really have like a sort of like moment where, oh, I was choking, so I don't know. I get it. You do though have OCD, and OCD does give, and like all anxiety disorders, give you this hypersensory kind of fixation where you're hypersensitive to your throat muscles, your breathing, any sort of pain, any sort of sensation, any sort of tingling in your body, you're hypersensitive to it. So you gotta just understand that's your OCD, that's your OCD brain, and do the same thing. Just simply do it, because if you know with OCD, it's the same thing. It's exposure and response prevention. You don't check the lock. You checked it once, you're done. You do the same with the alarm clock. You do the same with anything you need to check over and over again. You do it once and you're done, right? Because you said to yourself, you do it once, you're done. Same thing. It may not be fun. You hate it. You want to do it again. You don't want to do it again and again and again. No. Same thing with the choking phobia. You do it once. You look at your anxiety level, how it reduced, and then you say, okay, rest and try to do it perhaps another day, next day. And over time, you'll see, at least from my videos and what most evidence-based therapy is saying, your anxiety levels will go down. Right now, you're probably assuming you're getting like 70s and 80s of anxieties. They will go down to about 50, and if you continue doing it, you'll continue to go down. This is just common sense. This is evidence-based therapy. Not to say you're stupid or anything. It's very hard, especially on the internet, looking for advice when there's so much stuff for you to look at. You get just fatigued. You're like, oh my god, there's so much I need to learn. Like, screw all that. So this is a very successful video I think I made. I wanted to get into the psychology article and then start doing that, although that's like a 2.5 hour read. We're gonna do that one next week. Where basically we talk about the next week's video real quick, just to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week's video will be basically about pseudoscience, things that people don't really believe in about psychology, like Reiki or exorcisms or, stuff of that nature. We're gonna learn about psychology. We're gonna learn about evidence-based psychology to help people, not, pie in the sky type of tarot card, psychic laying hands, all that stuff. I'm not big into that stuff. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember guys, stay with it.